Good evening. Welcome to the Replenish Me show. On the Replenish Me show, we have dynamic guests to help female entrepreneurs to stay replenished in their mind, body, spirit, so that they can continue to powerfully impact the world with their purpose and vision. Hello, my name is Cordelia Gaffar, and I'm your hostess. I am an author and a co-author with Oprah Winfrey and America's Leading Ladies, an award-winning speaker, and a transformational business consultant where I help women one-on-one and with my group coaching programs. Visit my website, cordeliagaffar.com. Now for tonight's show. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of season 2 on the Replenish Me show. Today it's my pleasure to present Jim Phillips. He's a life strategist, author, speaker, and business coach. For over 30 years, he's been inspiring others to higher levels of achievement and understanding. Through his strategy sessions, coaching, writing, and presentations, one of Jim's gifts is not in his bio, but I'm going to insert this, approachableness, and as well as helping others to understand and apply complex spiritual concepts to their personal life, which has resulted in their creating and experiencing more of who they truly are and what they desire from life. The cool thing about Jim, he's written 2 books, The Key to Life, Living in Full Expression, published by Sacred Stories Publishing, and From Inspiration to Intention. And even cooler, he is a featured expert in the recently released Becoming the Keys transformational movie, which is award-winning by Robert J. And wasn't that also recently given another award, Jim?
It was. Okay. It's actually received a couple of awards, which is really exciting to be in a movie like that. And we'll see what happens with it. I think it's going to get much greater distribution too.
Absolutely. So tell me, how did all this come about? Where did you come from?
I ask myself that all the time. Why me? Why am I here? You know, it's interesting. Well, first of all, I just want to say that the writer and producer of the movie, it's a woman. It's Robin J., not Robert. So it's Robin J. Extraordinary woman who's done quite a few things. And actually, the movie I'm in, Becoming the Keys, is the third in a trilogy. And it's the Key movies. And each one, I guess each one builds on the previous one, although there's a different message in each one. But if there were to be an overriding message, it's just basically that we all have stuff that we experience in life. And it doesn't mean life is against us. It just means whatever it is that life presents to us is what was intended for us. In fact, intended for us by our soul, so that our soul could expand. And it's even about our soul gaining a greater understanding of who the soul is and what it's here to do. So I think those experiences that we have and that we create are specifically for that purpose, to gain that greater understanding. But did you want to know how the movie came to be? I mean, how I came to be a part of that?
That would be great to know as well. But, you just made me think of another question before you answered that.
Okay, go ahead.
So, where did your spiritual search or journey come from? I mean, it just seems so unique.
I think people want to call it unique, and I think people want to say that everybody has this unique way of coming into themselves, which is what I believe it is. It's a realization of our truth. And that's really what living in full expression is. It's about living in full expression of our truth as we know our truth in each moment. But I also think that each moment brings another opportunity to have a greater experience and expression of the truth of who we are. So to answer your question, how did I gain this desire or this inspiration? There was never a defining moment for me. There wasn't a situation where, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way for people who have had this experience, but I was never lying on the bathroom floor, curled up in the fetal position, crying and saying, help me. I never got to that point.
Right.
And I think that part of my message, quite frankly, is to let people know you don't have to get to that point to make a conscious decision to have your life be the way that you would intend it to be, to be more open and receptive to all that life has to offer. Instead of waiting until we get to that absolute, I don't know what to do, I'm struggling, the whole world is crashing in on me. I just don't think we need to get to that place. And I've had many successes in my life, and I've had as many challenges as anybody else. Now, maybe they haven't taken the shape of what other people have experienced, but they were still difficult for me. And it was what I needed to be more cognizant of who I am and what I'm capable of doing. But I also want to say that regardless of where somebody thinks they aren't where they're going to end up. And this is a continuous process. You don't all of a sudden find yourself on top of the mountain. The mountain keeps getting bigger, and you find yourself continuing to scale. But that's the incredible opportunity that we're given, is to consistently go through this process of greater understanding, of expanding, of playing with all that we have to play with, of enjoying and supporting one another, and recognizing that for the most part, all that we see around us is only there because we've agreed to it and we hold on to it, and we're afraid to let it go because it's the known. And if we could just let go of that and recognize that in each moment there's something brand new that we can experience and that we can create.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that's such a great point. We don't have to be at our wits' end before we have enlightenment. You know, why not just make every moment an enlightening moment and see what's the learning there?
Right.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's been fun. I did have an experience when I was 13 years old. And to me, I guess people think it's profound. To me, it was just an experience that I had. And at the time, I was 13. And at the time it happened, I questioned it because I was questioning my sanity, quite frankly, because I was looking around, I was sitting in church with my parents and looking at the minister. And I saw some people to my left that were kind of moving around a little bit, getting ready to pass the offering basket. And I was very uncomfortable with being in church. And it had nothing to do with beliefs, religion, or any of that, to my knowledge at the time. But I just was uncomfortable. And I first was thinking, okay, I'm 13 years old. Any 13-year-old boy would rather be out playing basketball or baseball or just hanging out with your friends. And yet there was a discomfort that I couldn't quite put my finger on. And then as I was thinking about that, up to the right-hand side of my face, this voice said, you're going to be doing this someday. And I jerked my head up and I looked to find the source of the voice. And of course, it wasn't there.
Right.
My parents, who were on either side of me, they didn't move. Nobody around me moved. And I'm thinking, okay, now I've really lost it because that couldn't possibly have happened. But then I started thinking, well, what am I going to be doing? Because it's not going to be standing in front of a congregation. That is about as far from what I see myself doing as anything I can imagine at 13 years old. And then it was a couple minutes later, the same voice, the same place above to the right-hand side of my head said, you're going to be doing it differently. And I'm thinking, okay, so I'm going to be doing what differently? I said, this is just nuts. Of course, nobody looked around. And so that experience I held in until I published my book 4 years ago. And I'm 65 years old. So it was within me 50 or 48, 49 years, whatever the time frame is.
Wow.
My parents didn't know about it. None of my family members knew about it until they read it in my book. And they asked, why didn't you tell anybody? Well, that to me wasn't something you just come blurting out. You start telling people about, because I wasn't sure and I didn't know what it meant. But yet, as I reflect on my life now, and in fact, as I was going through my life, I've had experiences that caused me to reflect on that time and question whether or not this was one of those experiences that is showing me that I'm going to be doing what I was experiencing, but doing it differently. And that primarily is being in front of people, sharing ideas and information. You could say ministering to people if you want, but not within the religious context, just sharing information. And more of what I do, though, is ask questions. And that's really what my book is about. It's about asking questions, because I don't feel I have the answer for anybody. I'm still trying to get all the answers for myself. And yet I believe the questions I ask myself are meaningful questions. And I believe the answers that I give myself that are in the book are answers that would benefit other people. But it's not about them accepting what I have said. It's about allowing what I have said to be another perspective. If it resonates with somebody, great, but still expand on it as the individual you are, so that you're living from your truth, not just based on what I said. That's the problem with the world right now, is we're basically living our lives based on what everybody else has said, instead of really thinking about it. It's too easy to Google things instead of having a thought and say, well, what do I really believe about this? And then, of course, everything we hear now about fake news, this and that, it's hard to discern for a lot of people what the truth is. And then I think we've gotten lazy, and we just say, okay, well, that's a smart person. That person's got to know the answer. So why should I expend my energy when I can just rely on what this other person said? And that's doing way more harm than it is good for anybody.
Yeah, I really agree with that. But the thing that I like most about what you said is that you're encouraging curiosity, no matter, because some people would say, oh, you're 65, like, why bother? Like, don't you know it all by now, right?
Right.
And the fact that you're, still questioning and still encouraging others to be curious about it, and I guess you're still researching, not just in the form of, collecting data with the clients that you work with, but I'm pretty sure you're diving pretty deep, because as a writer, we usually read lots of books, right?
Yeah, it's reading books, it's having conversations with people. Most of it comes from my personal experience, though, and trying to understand an experience I have, and not understand why, but understand the benefit. What is this giving me? What is this giving me the opportunity to understand about myself? Because to me, that's what life is for. It's about self-realization. It's about, one of the terms I use is shedding the untruths that we've heaped upon ourselves and that we've allowed others to heap upon us, that we hold on to shed those, to allow the truth of who we are to be fully exposed. And then as more and more the truth of who we are is exposed, living from and as that truth. And then I've had people say, well, what is that? What's that truth? And I said, I can't answer that for you. It's your truth, not my truth. And the word curiosity I love, because it's a word that we don't pay much attention to anymore. Again, because we can rely on Google to find an answer about anything. And then we rely on that as being the definitive source. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's true either. But I think the curiosity part of it is a key component, because that's using our imagination. Our imagination is a gift we've been given to imagine, which is create the picture of whatever it is we desire to experience and express. Now, the challenge that we have is we usually measure what we can imagine against what we believe is true and what we believe is possible. So our imagination is actually limited in that way. If we can let go of any thoughts that we hold as true, any beliefs that we hold, wipe the slate clean, basically, and allow our imagination just to absolutely run free. I mean, imagine beyond reason, and don't judge it, don't question it, just see what happens. Think about all the crazy things that humanity has done in terms of, I mean, just like going to the moon or creating airplanes or stuff in medicine. Somebody had to have a crazy, wild curiosity and imagining to allow themselves to go into that space to try to figure it out. And yet we hold ourselves back as if, oh, that's only what somebody else can do, or they're smarter than me, or they did this or they do that. But then yet you read the biographies of a lot of these people and they dropped out of school in 6th grade.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to me. And it's a simple process, but it's a difficult process because we get in the way. And it's really a matter of stepping aside and just allowing life to be as full and complete as it is and as it can be. Because I'm gonna backtrack for a second. I wrote something the other day, and I actually did a video on it that hasn't been published yet.
Oh, okay.
But you were talking about my being 65 years old and still being curious and still being a person who researches and really plays with life as much as I possibly can. I'm a baby boomer, and a lot of the baby boomers are getting to the point now, or have already gotten to the point earlier, of thinking, my life's been great. A lot has happened during the course of my life, but something's missing. And there's got to be more to this than just being here, having a big car, having a big house, putting my kids through college, having a good relationship, making a lot of money. Now what? And what I wrote about, and it was a thought that I had when I was walking the other day, is that we're too concerned with life has to be better than this. Instead of saying, I am to be better than this. It's not about life. I'm using myself as an example. It's about me being better, me having a grander experience of me. And then asking the question, what is it I can do, or how is it I can be that would allow me to have that grander experience? And so that's more the focus now. It's not about life and what I can do with life and manipulate life. It's about, I'll give you the thought that just came through. And I say this every morning when I walk. What is required of me to allow the I am that I am to experience and express itself and its creations through me and as me? So that's the question I ask every morning. And then I pay attention, and then I act on it. And then life is amazing. It doesn't mean it's easy, because part of that experience and expression is about expanding my experience of my, and when I say my, I'm talking about the divine working through all of us, of my capabilities of manifesting in this world in whatever form it takes, and just accepting it.
So what I'm hearing you say is like life in full expression is about being very intentional about pulling back the layers, distinguishing what is you and what has been layered upon you during the course of your life, so that in your human experience, you let your light shine. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes. And I'm going to say something that some people might take offense to. And it's not meant to be that. And it's not meant to belittle an experience or a traumatic situation that somebody's been through. Everything in life is nothing more than an experience. Some are joyful, some are sad, some are painful, some are traumatic. But when we get down to the truth of it, it was nothing more than an experience. And sorry it happened the way that it did for some people because of how difficult and how painful it was. However, in this moment, right now, we're not going through that experience. And in this moment, I have the opportunity to create and experience whatever it is that I want. Now, all too often, people hold on to the traumatic experience of the past or anything that happened in the past to determine who they are and what they're capable of doing right now. And in some cases, and this is where it might rub people the wrong way, it almost becomes a badge of honor. And we've got to let that go, because that isn't who that person is. And if it was me that went through the traumatic experience, it's who I was in the moment of the experience. It's not who I am now. Who I am now went through the experience, and here I am. I've moved beyond it. And it's gone and it's done unless I hold on to it and keep reliving it. And again, it doesn't mean that we're condoning someone else's behavior if they did something horrendous to us. But it just means that where we are right now, we're always at a point of choice to choose how we're going to experience life. And we can continue to hold on to our misery if you want. And our misery, though, if we hold on to that, is denying our happiness. But always recognizing that we're at a point of choice where we can choose happiness, we can choose joy, we can choose love, we can choose to be someone who embraces life fully and completely and recognizes that everything life presents to us is truly for our benefit.
And to be fair, I'm going to insert a disclaimer here because there are people that actually have conditions like PTSD, which, it is a challenge, like more than a challenge to overcome. So
Right.
Clearly in this conversation, that's not what we're addressing. We're addressing lower versions of trauma that are things that we can choose to separate ourselves from or not. So I just wanted to say that because we are kind of in like treading interesting territory there. So.
And I appreciate you doing that. And that's why I said that it's not about belittling anybody's experience. And there's no question that the experience is going to have effects on us, some short term, some longer term, some lifelong. We don't know. We don't know what the intention of the soul was that is going through that experience. We don't know what the intention of the soul is from this point forward to understand the experience or move through it. And it's not about judgment, because none of us knows what somebody else has gone through, is going through, or what their soul intended for them in this lifetime. And so I think that's where we need to honor and respect everybody. But my point is that really in each moment, we have that opportunity to choose how we want to experience life from that point forward.
Yeah, definitely. We're in agreement there. And, to that point, that's why I think you'll agree that self-forgiveness, right? The piece where you were saying, just looking at your life moment to moment without judgment is super important. So we'll dive deeper into some of the, case studies, people you've worked with, and results they get with your method of living life in full expression. We'll be right back. Welcome to Life Coach Radio Network. On Life Coach Radio Network, we have many shows such as Undivided with Frank Maduri and Money Matters. Every week, tune in live on Wednesday, the first and third Wednesday of the month, to enjoy Undivided with Frank Maduri. He has very interesting topics and many things to share. And of course, on the second and fourth Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, enjoy the Replenish Me show. Thank you for listening to Life Coach Radio Network. All right, so we're back, and now we're going to dive into the people who seek to work with you. What is it that they're seeking out of their life or from you that they haven't found anyplace else?
I think that the main thing is they're seeking understanding. And it really is, what the work that I do is, I call myself a life strategist, because I'm not going to solve somebody else's problems, but I can work with them to create strategies that would lead them to where they need to go to resolve whatever the issues are they're trying to work through, or to gain that greater understanding of who they are. And that's a key component of my work, is helping people gain that understanding of who they are. If you look in the mirror, that's not who you are. And then the question always is, well, who's looking out of the mirror, or who's looking out of my eyes into the mirror, seeing the reflection of the physical body? And then who is it that's thinking about the eyes that are looking out from this body, looking into the mirror, seeing the reflection of the physical body that's there? And you can keep going on and on and on about this depth of consciousness and awareness and who somebody is. It's also about helping people move through whatever it is that's holding them back from truly being who they believe they have the potential to be. Because I think most people have this knowing that what they do and how they've done it, and that life has more to offer. And then getting back to what I said earlier, that there is more of ourselves to experience and express. So the question is, okay, so why don't you allow that to happen? What is it that's holding you back from being or living in full expression of your truth, living in full expression of your divine essence? And it always goes back to limiting beliefs. I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I'm worthy of it. I don't think I have the tools. I don't think I'm capable. I'm not loved. I mean, all of these very common core limiting beliefs that we have. And the question always is, okay, well, tell me what it is that's holding you back. Why do you think you can't have something? And just use, I'm not good enough. And then the question is, okay, well, where did that come from? What makes you think you're not good enough? Well, when I was growing up, my parents said this, this, and this. And I said, okay, well, if your parents said that, why does that make them right? What do they know about you? When you're the one in the physical body, you're the one that understands what's going on. You're having the feelings and the emotions and all the other things that are part of being human. What do they know? Why are you holding on to what they say is the truth? And then we can also look at, well, tell me some other situations in your life where you've had tremendous success, where there's been something you really wanted to do, and regardless of what somebody else said, or regardless of what was put before you, you were able to accomplish it. And they'll tell me something, and they get all lit up about it, and they get really happy and joyful. And I say, okay, well, what's the difference between what you did then and what you're telling me you can't do now? because what you did then was you got out of your own way and you went forward and you accomplished whatever it is you set out to do. So you've already proven to yourself you can do it, which just tells me that that limiting belief you're holding about yourself is nothing more than an illusion, and it's something you're holding on to. So how do you get rid of that? How do you, the term I use is shattering the illusions of limiting beliefs so that we get to the truth of who we are. And this is just a process we work through. But I've had a lot of people tell me that primarily they gain more confidence in themselves. They become more trusting in themselves. And if you think about self-trust, if you trusted yourself in every aspect of life, what wouldn't you try? I mean, you would know that you had everything you need to accomplish what you need, and we'd be willing to try more. And the more we try, the more we're going to have successes, if we can use that term. And I don't want to label anything as a success or a failure, because I think everything is an experience. So regardless of what the outcome is, you still have the experience that's going to benefit you. But it just gets to this point of, why have I held myself back for so long? Why have I not allowed myself to tap into the divine potential, the unlimited potential that is available to all of us? It's been an extraordinary experience for me. I had one woman tell me one time that had heard me speak, and she told me she had heard me speak 2 years prior to this particular presentation I was given. And she walked up to me after the presentation, and it took like 5 seconds. She looked at me, she said, "I heard you speak 2 years ago, and what you said saved my daughter's life." And she walked away. And I don't know who she was. I don't know what I would have said. I don't remember the presentation I gave where she heard that. But what I got from that was, you never know who's in the audience. And I don't mean that from people being on a stage speaking. I'm talking about anybody who's around you, who's in witness of who you are and what you're doing. We're benefiting people all the time, just as we're benefiting from how we observe other people, who they are, how they're being, what they do, how they interact with other people. There's always that influence. And we can choose to be like them, or we can choose to say, no, that's not the way I want to be, and do something completely different. But regardless, we're being influenced by other people. And so that's a part of the work I do too. It's helping people understand that what's happening around you that you're paying attention to, and what are you allowing into your thoughts and beliefs that is limiting who you believe you are and what you're capable of doing. And now what's happening within you, because we know that what happens within us is going to be reflected to us in the outer world. So we've got to pay attention to our feelings, to our thoughts, to our beliefs, question them. And it's not to prove ourselves wrong, but it's to consistently be moving towards the truth. And the more we do that, the greater the opportunity we have to experience and express ourselves from that truth and as that truth.
As I'm listening to you, I'm remembering earlier this year, I interviewed Sister Jenna, who the topic of our conversation is healing in turbulent times. So I know that something else that's super important to you is making, humanity see each other as humans, right? Like we're one big universal family. So speak to me from the perspective of someone who is very affected by the status quo, and they feel like, well, we just have to do this because that's the way it is.
I love Sister Jenna. I was on her show, so we had a really good conversation. So I appreciate you bringing her up. She's an extraordinary lady.
Yeah, she is.
It's difficult, regardless of where anyone is spiritually or consciously, to deal with what's happening around the planet right now. It's very difficult to deal with what's happening in this country, and to try to see everything in a positive light. But what I do, and what helps me move through the turbulent times, is recognize that everything that's happening is happening with there being a specific benefit to it. I look at what's happening around the world right now, and we can say it's turmoil, it's conflict, it's all of these things that would make it appear that the world is basically falling apart. But I look at it as being a purging. And I think that it is all this negative energy, all this negative thought, all this fear, which is what it all boils down to. And within fear is greed, and it's all the racism, it's all the stuff that we see going on. And it's a purging, and it has to come to the surface to be addressed. And I think maybe more now than other times in our history, so much of it's coming to the surface at the same time that it becomes overwhelming, as opposed to one aspect of it coming up. It just seems like it's all coming up at the same time and needing to be dealt with. So what I do is I hold on to the fact that, okay, this is just the cleansing process. And if I can see beyond what's being shown to me and see the beauty, the peace, the love, the joy, the connectedness of all of us, regardless of what someone else might be doing on the planet, that we could say that's an evil person, or they're doing this or doing that. It's recognizing that regardless of the outward appearance, that each one of us is still an expression of God or the divine. And that's a hard thing for people to understand when everything that's in front of us is saying otherwise. Yeah. And yet it will only be when we get to that point of everybody realizing that we are all the same, that we're going to have the experience that we all say we want to have. The challenge is, I'll just give an example. Everybody on this planet, all 7 billion plus people, could wake up tomorrow morning and say, from this point forward, I will be peaceful. And that would be it. That's it. Each person just to say, I'll be peaceful and be peaceful. And it changes every dynamic, the wars, the hate, the fear, I mean, all of it. The problem is, oh, well, he won't do it and she won't do it. So why should I do it? Why should I be the one to try to be this peaceful, kind, loving, generous person when all these other people are doing all these other things? And they're doing bad, negative things, and look at all the stuff they're getting.
Yeah.
And so it feeds the wrong, I guess, image or
energy.
Yeah, it's definitely the energy behind it. And yet it really is a matter of understanding it's already there. I mean, it's already there. It's just about each one of us accepting it and allowing that to be who we are.
So you're saying if we were to choose a higher vibration, like if we just chose peace or love, as opposed to choosing fear, right? Because like what we were saying earlier, we were talking about how words matter. I call it sweet talk. Everybody else calls it something else. But, like if we were to say, you know what, I'm not going to be in a state of fear. I'm going to choose to be in a state of love and radiate that throughout my day. You think that the people that I pass will be affected by my vibration and energy?
Yes, they will. However, here, and this is where we get into semantics, and you were talking about words matter, and it's amazing how just a little switch in perspective. If we say, I will choose not to be fearful, we're acknowledging we're fearful. So we're saying, I'm fearful, and that holds fear in place. You already are peace. You already are love. You already are joy. You already are the divine in expression. I'm going to use the word align. It's about aligning to that which you already are, which I know sounds like it's well, it is. It's a subtle shift. And it's just not attaching to the word, because the word is a word we created. It's a word that we've associated with what we believe to be fearful, or with what we believe to be bad, or with what we believe to be evil, instead of allowing that which we are. And of course, somebody's got to believe that too. You got to believe that you are an expression of the divine to fully grasp that. And a lot of people will say, well, no, that's not true, because the divine certainly wouldn't have the thoughts that I have. And the divine certainly wouldn't do the things that I've done. My question is, how do you know that? How do you know the divine just didn't want to have that experience? Just to have it. I mean, we don't know that.
We don't.
No.
Yeah.
And yet the person who, or any of us, that then would have the thought of, well, the divine wouldn't do that. They're already progressing to allow the experience of themselves as the divine to expand into a higher vibration or a higher consciousness, because they become aware of it. So that's part of the process too. Maybe the divine used that experience for that person to go through to be this negative, evil person, so that they would come to the realization that that's not who they are.
So what are some of the results that people have gotten that have worked with you?
I'm not going to say people make more money. I'm not going to say
Right.
people's lives are any less difficult than they are, because the difficulty is a part of it. I just call it challenging opportunities, but it's just the recognition, I think, that this is all part of the process of our coming to the realization of our truth. And let me put it this way. I do see people happier. I do see people more joyful. I do see people making better decisions in their lives that are more in alignment with the experience and expression they want to have in life than maybe they had before. I see people becoming and being less judgmental, because through our work they've realized that any judgment they have of somebody else is really a judgment of themselves. So then we get back to the limiting belief they might hold about themselves, which is causing them to have the judgment to begin with. So it's really about releasing all of those things that are not who we are, that we have held on to, that we've been programmed to believe, that somehow our personality self, the small ego self, has just tapped into and held on to as that being who we are. I don't know if that answers your question, because to me, the benefit that somebody has is going to be subjective. It's
Yeah.
going to be really their own experience of it. And for me, it comes more from feelings. And yet, if somebody is happier, if they're more joyful, if they're more confident, if they are more self-trusting, as I mentioned, they're going to achieve more, because they're going to be willing to step out more. They're not going to have the fear of what somebody else might say. They're not going to have the fear of how they're going to be perceived by other people. They're not going to have fear of failure, because now they recognize that there isn't any failure. It's just another experience that you had, maybe that didn't result in the expectation you had, but it was still another experience. So to me, that's where people gain the benefit of working with me and other people. I'm not saying I'm the only one that does this, but it's really about coming to terms with who you are and what you're capable of doing, and living life fully and completely and wholly as the truth of who you are, and embracing all that life offers.
You completely answered my question. I mean, I'm hearing you say that you help people align with operating in excellence, basically. So that's the result of working with you. And, to your point, they could work with anybody else. But I feel like one thing I've always liked about you is you seem a little bit more intuitive than we would expect from a man.
A 65-year-old businessman.
Okay. Yes, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very intuitive. I am very careful that I don't call myself a healer, because I don't want that label, because to me, we all heal ourselves. But if I can bring someone's attention and intention towards what they might be able to do to better themselves, better their life experiences, and that's what I want to do. But I pick up on subtleties with people, and we'll bring it up in conversation. A lot of the times, if I pick up on something, it's not even that I'm conscious of it, it's just that I say it. It just comes out, and I make a comment or make a statement. I'll be giving a presentation. This to me is always really funny. And depending upon the topic, I would tell the audience, I will say, if I say something that's really profound, you better have written it down, because if you ask me what I said, I'm not going to be able to tell you what it was.
Yeah.
And I'll try to think about it. And it's a funny experience to go through. Or if something's recorded, I listen to it after the fact. Wow, where'd that come from? So it's just, it's about being aware and just allowing it and flow.
The Replenish Me mastermind and program is all about you. Have you been feeling like, can I just find a way to replenish myself? How do I stay deeply invested in my mission and purpose? And why am I still doing what I'm doing? Have you really lost sight and focus? What if there was a program that helped you to not only start over with that brand new slate, but support you with how to do that in a way that enriches you and empowers you to not just carry on, but to change the entire way you live your life. I call the program Replenish Me. The important thing about this is we start out by creating a new foundation, and in that process, just releasing everything and anything and anyone who doesn't serve you, and then replacing that with what you truly desire and creating a roadmap. Along the way, we're going to doubt ourselves a bit. So we roll in the process of self-compassion, self-forgiveness, and self-belief. Does it sound too good to be true? Well, let me introduce you to my page. This is the Replenish Me page. Here, there is a free training. As you see, there's a few videos at the top for some of the process, and you can actually even go to my actual website, which is replenishme.info. Okay? And here you can find out more about the program, the women that will be in there, and get the special training, the 3-part free training yourself. So I want to invite you to go to www.replenishme.info and start on that path of staying nourished, body, mind, and soul. Now, back to our show. Okay, so we're coming back from our technological overwhelm from his power.
Yeah, that power surge.
That power surge, yeah. And, we've just really had a great conversation and talking about tuning in and being intentional with finding out who we really are, and all the things that we can gain by living life in full expression. So now let's find out how we can connect with you and books you have and all those wonderful things.
Okay. Well, I just want to show the book real quick because I want to point out something that to me is obvious, but somehow gets missed by a lot of people. The name of the book is The Key to Life Living in Full Expression. And the word life is the acronym, is the acronym for living in full expression. And when that came to me, it just showed me that's what life is. That's what life is about us living in full expression. People can get a copy of the book on my website. They can also get a copy of the movie at livinginfullexpression.com. They can also go to Amazon. What I put on my website, though, is I put together what I just call the bundle. And it's got my book, The Key to Life Living in Full Expression. It's got my other book, From Inspiration to Intention, and it's got the movie, all three for a bundled price, which is a lot less expensive than just ordering one at a time. So they can get that there. The next speaking event I have is actually in Sedona, Arizona, and that is going to be at the Soul Treat, which is part of the Wellness Universe, and that is on November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and it's in Sedona. And they can go to soultreat.com and get all the information about that if anybody's interested in participating in that event. It's going to be a great event. Be a lot of really, really good people there.
Yeah, I love Sedona. It's one of the vortexes, right?
It's an incredible place. And of course, everybody talks about the energy there. You have to go there to experience it because it's just remarkable.
It is. It really is. So that's going to be the highlight when we meet in Scottsdale next year. I'm definitely going to drive over to Sedona or down to Sedona.
It's only about 2 hours away, but it's a gorgeous drive too.
Yeah, it is. Really nice. So, all right. So I have one more question for you, Jim. I came up with this idea of Who Am I Wednesday? And it's not the titles that we bear or our pecking order in a family or anything like that, but it's really about everything that you talk about, like we are a speck of dust in the universe, or, a soul that has chosen this body. So what is your take on that?
I agree.
short answer.
It's what's amazing, every once in a while, I'm sure you've heard this too, you will hear someone say that we are made of the same stuff that the stars are made. And it's a hard concept to grasp. And yet I think most of us hold stars in high esteem because they sparkle and they're beautiful and they're mysterious. And I mean, all of these things. And if you think about the fact that everything is made of the same stuff, but just in a different form, and you realize that we are as magnificent as the star, or the star is as magnificent as we are, or the beautiful flower that we see is another representation of the same energy, the same divine essence that we are. And we recognize that everything is of the same thing that has, for whatever reason, has taken that particular shape to express through. And if we can get away from looking at the physical body, and this is really going to get into things like judgment, because we can look at another person, let's just say somebody is overweight. And of course, the unfortunate thing about many people who are overweight, the first thing most people think is they're lazy, they don't take care of themselves. I mean, all these other things that we can say. And yet that has nothing to do with it. The soul that's contained within that has chosen that physical body to experience and express through for whatever reason. And that's not something that we will ever know. And I think that if we could recognize that and honor and respect each other for the life path we have chosen as the soul that we are, get away from what we perceive just to be the physical form and judging the physical form. I'll give you an example of an experience I had. I'm kind of jumping around with this. I was getting my hair cut. And this is actually a story that's in my book. I was getting my hair cut one day, and while I was waiting there to be called to the chair where my stylist was, she was styling the hair of this mother. And I'm going to say the mom was probably in her 50s. I can't be sure, but it appeared to be somewhere in that age. Sitting beside her in a wheelchair was her adult son. Maybe she was older than that, but her adult son, again, I couldn't tell his age. Severely challenged, mentally and physically, severely challenged. He was strapped into the chair so that he could be held upright. And he would jump around wildly. And she was talking to him and laughing with him. And he was laughing and just in his wheelchair, and I remember watching that, and first thought was, God bless you, the mom, for what she was doing and how she was handling the situation, which I know was extremely difficult. But then she would say something to her son, and he would laugh hysterically. And it was a wild laugh. I mean, an out of control kind of thing, but you could tell he was absolutely filled with joy. But the expression of it through his body was totally different than what we would say. And if you happened to walk by and you weren't a party to the conversation as I was, you would say something was wrong. But I'm sitting there, I'm going, that is without a doubt the most incredible expression of love I've ever seen. And when you get to the who am I on Wednesday, well, that's who we are on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we have to recognize that and get beyond this physical perception and recognize that we've each come here in this physical body, which is the perfect embodiment for what we're here to experience and express in this world. And not judge other people, because as I said earlier, that's judgment against ourselves. And we've got to accept ourselves for who we are and what we are and how we're here to experience and express, and take responsibility for our lives, for what we've chosen to do in the past, but also what we're choosing from this moment forward in terms of how we want to experience and express life, and how we want to be perceived in the world, and how we want to experience ourselves in this world. How do you want to be remembered? And while that doesn't really have any bearing on it, because how I want to be remembered has no bearing on anything other than that's just my perception of how I want people to think about me. But I think we all want to be remembered in a very positive way, in a kind way, in a loving way, in a beneficial way, in a supportive way, as someone who made a difference in the world, whether it was by something we did, something we said, or just who we were being when we're connecting with other people. And that connection is what holds us all together.
That's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's like, that is, when we think of positively impacting the world, to your point, sometimes we think about legacy, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, what legacy is she leaving there? Everywhere she goes, people see how she brings joy out of her son and how they have that bond and relationship, deep love.
Right.
And that is really seriously lacking in the world. So she's powerfully impacting the world every time she goes to get her hair cut.
Right.
I'm sure he gets his hair cut too. You may have missed that one.
Yeah. 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 It was remarkable. And that was probably only 6 or 7 years ago. And being my age, I was glad I had that experience and that recognition. And I'm not sure I would have had that same thought 20 years ago. But it
Mm,
just shows where I am now versus where I was in terms of my recognition of the world and who all of us are and the connection that we all have with one another. I don't even want to say connection. There is no division. So it's not about us being connected. It's that we are all one. There's not any lines of demarcation other than the ones we put there.
yeah, see, now that's a whole different conversation. When I started studying, I don't know if you've ever read Dr. Candace Pert,
No,
um, but the
I'm
molecule.
familiar with who she is, though, but I have not read it.
Yeah, she's from this DC metro area. Of course, she's passed now. But when she was talking about how we appear to be a solid form, but we're not. We're just kind of like energy fields, and you know, that's really we, the way our brains are created, we see the different individual forms, but we're not. We're just like a blob.
What's interesting to me, if you, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to describe this. Have you seen like on a commercial where it'll show like a I would say a field of energy, and let's just say it's a car that's being made, and
Okay.
that it shows that the car is being made, that everything is still connected, like it's just dots, and then all of a sudden this car appears and it's still all the different dots, but yet everything else is still part of the same dots. Well, that's the way that I perceive life, is that it's one continuous, well, it is, it's one continuous energy field with with different forms that have decided to take shape or that have chosen to take shape within it, and there's no break in between anything. It's just all one continuous energy. I don't know how else to put it. It's I wish I could have that to show it, because I think it would make more sense if I could show it.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. It's kind of like the animation, right? In commercials
Yeah.
where they show the concept of the car and then it
Right.
populates.
Or even in Star Trek, when somebody would say, beam me up, Scotty, and they would be pixelated.
Yes.
But if you think about everything being pixelated like that, then that gives you an idea that it's all part of that same energy field. And
That's,
yet it's not in as solid a form.
yeah, that's
Of course,
true.
there's a lot of people that don't know who Star Trek was or Scotty, so
There is a new version of Star Trek.
I know. But was Scotty on there?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I guess we're dating ourselves.
Yeah,
But tuning fork people would disagree with you, but because there is an end to our individual fields. But that I've seen. Have you ever seen someone use a tuning fork?
yes,
Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing, but definitely we are all an energy force, and we, in that way, should just should we should not should on ourselves, but it would
right,
be best to look in each other's eyes and see the mirror of ourselves.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for your thoughts on that. I'm so excited to share that America's Leading Ladies book is now available in paperback. I picked up my copies today, and you can now click on that link on my website, which is cordeliagaffar.com, and order your signed copy of the book. This is 320 pages of pure gold, starting with Oprah Winfrey, with some of the most dynamic women in North America. We have Jenny Zhu, we have Tina Teranchian, who I interviewed. In the author series, we have Dr. Marie-Flore Latortu, we have Lale Hancock, we have Marjorie Salson. These are all, and Paula Vale, let's not forget her, and Natalie Rekstad, who is right after or right before Melinda Gates, and Claudia Harvey, who is right after Oprah Winfrey. So, and the lovely Catherine Gruner, who I immediately bonded with, and the other Catherine, who I also bonded with, Catherine Rolfe Martin, and Anita Hawkins, and Leah Williams, and Rhonda Farah. These are all actually, some of the names that I just named are women who have been recognized by the International Association of Top Professionals. So there's 12 of those women in this book as well. America's Leading Ladies Who Positively Impact Our World, Stories of Courage, Challenge, and Triumph. Get your copy on CordeliaGaffar.com today. Now back to the show. Closing thoughts you want to leave us with?
I guess what I would just tell people is number one, be easy on yourself. Don't beat yourself up over things you think are right or wrong. You are who you are. You've done what you've done. None of that's going to change. But the question would be is, who do you want to be now? Who do you want to experience now? How do you want to experience and express in the world? Because we're always at that point of choice. And it's about being clear on what you want to experience too. And then that way you can make choices in alignment with that direction you want to go, or that experience that you want to create. But it's also recognizing that we are so more powerful than we believe we are. And we've got to recognize that. We've got to allow that. In fact, just give yourself permission to be who you are, and stop trying to be who everybody else wants you to be. Just be you. That's it. Be you. That's why you're here. That's why you incarnated in that physical body you're in. That's why you are having the experiences that you're having, to be you.
Thank you for that. I sometimes wonder, do I have these guests on for my listeners or for myself? That felt like a very personal message. I really needed to.
It's all one and the same.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And tune in next time on the Replenish Me show for the next wonderful and dynamic guest. Good night. Thank you for listening to the Replenish Me show. Remember, sharing is caring, so share this with a friend. I'm sure that you benefited and you've learned something new. Now it's time to implement and be the beacon of light that you're called to be in this world. With replenishing thoughts, until next week, good night.